In partnership with most provinces and territories, the federal government has announced a new framework to foster fully inclusive early education and child care services across the country, while respecting the needs and circumstances of each jurisdiction. Under the agreement, the federal government will send billions of dollars to the provinces and territories to focus on creating new child care spaces for families with greater needs. These include families that are low-income, indigenous, single-parent, living in underserved communities or with children with disabilities. Funding will be also provided to help parents who work non-standard hours to obtain child care more easily. Every child from coast to coast deserves access to quality learning and child care, said Jean-Yves Duclos, the Federal Minister of Families, Children and Social Development. This agreement will help give more Canadian children the best possible start and provide more support to families across our country. The government's plan commits Ottawa to a long-term partnership with provinces and territories, following the Liberals' 2017 budget commitment to invest $7.5 billion in child care and early learning over the next 11 years. The government said the plan could create up to 40,000 new spaces across Canada over the next 3 years. But NDP leader Tom Mulcair said the funding announced by the Liberals won't be enough to help Canadian families cover the rising costs of child care. This is not at all what the Liberals promised, Mulcair said. Once again, Mr. Trudeau promises a great deal, but always fails to deliver. Duclos dismissed suggestions that the Liberals focus on families with higher needs signals a turn away from the principle of universality, which has historically guided federal investments in health and social services. Universality remains part of the government's long-term vision, Duclos said, but the Liberals committed during the last election to put in place child care and early learning systems that are fully inclusive, both from an economic and social perspective. We know how difficult financially it is for many families across Canada to have access to affordable child care, he said. There are elements of people's family life that make it more difficult for them than for other families to participate in the labor market, to have access to quality child care for their children. But the government's focus on families with higher needs is generating mixed reaction among child care advocates. Morna Ballantyne, Executive Director of the Child Care Advocacy Association of Canada, said the government must recognize that the crisis in child care extends far beyond those families. We certainly have no problem with federal funds being used to help high-needs families and children, she said. But there are a lot of parents and children who don't have access to child care even though they wouldn't fall into the groups that the framework agreement specifies as being high needs. Still, Ballantyne said she's glad to see the federal government reasserting a leadership role on this issue, committing both levels of government to work together to improve child care and early learning services. The Conservatives' critic for children's issues, Ontario MP Karen Vecchio, also had concerns about how the government's plan might be rolled out.